Before we start, or before we go on the record, I'll let the people who are in the audience here know that as of this meeting, we have new technology that we are using as commissioners, and we don't have, so we're all changing our system of how we refer to documents and notes that we've made as we've reviewed the packages, and how we pull up things on the screen. So if there's a little bit of shuffling around here and secretly cursing under our breath, please excuse us, and we'll blame the technology. Good evening, and welcome to the meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission for July 24th, 2024. May we have the roll call, please?
Chair Wormick is excused. Vice Chair Alain.
Present.
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Commissioner Murphy.
Present.
Commissioner Morrell. Commissioner Murphy.
Present. I think you
And
did Miller
Commissioner
and Murphy.
Rotman. Excused.
I'm here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, the agenda was available for public access at the City Hall Bulletin Board and online as of Thursday evening, July 18th, in accordance with city policies and procedures.
Thank you. Before I ask for acceptance of the agenda, I'd like to, for us to take a look at, we might want to reorder resequence the order in which we hear some things. And let me explain for the people in our audience first that. Is this better? Okay, what I'd like to do is consider the sequencing of items on the agenda tonight in deference to the size of the audience that we have and the desire to participate in, I suspect, one item in particular. And what I'd like the audience to note is that typically what happens is we get a lot of public testimony on public hearing items. Tonight, we have two public hearing items, and those are taken first. Tonight, we have two public hearing items, one that has to do with a conditional use permit for the UPS United Parcel Service, and the other one that is dealing specifically with the subdividing of a large lot on Gene Autry Drive into two parcels. Can I see just from a show of hands how many people are here to address either one of those issues? Okay, that's what I was expecting. And can you tell me, Director, how many people have signed up to speak?
We have 10 members who have signed up, or 10 members of the audience who have signed up to speak on item 4C, which is the Prescott Preserve application, and we have just members of the applicant team for the public hearings. We do have several members online on Zoom, again, several associated with some of the applications we're hearing tonight. We don't have anyone registered to speak via Zoom other than applicant teams, but we typically would extend the courtesy to those online to see if they would like to speak. There are about, I would say, 18 people online who are not associated with an applicant team.
Okay, and so typically then what we would do if we follow the agenda is that we would have the public hearing items first, but first we would have the public speak on items not scheduled for a public hearing, and that would include the Prescott Preserve. And then they would listen to the couple of public hearings and other items of business until we got to the Prescott Preserve, and they wouldn't be able to talk at that time. So what I'm going to propose that we consider doing is moving that item from 4C up to be the first item that we hear before the public hearings, and allow the public comment to come before that.
Second.
So If I have a motion to accept the agenda modified to reflect that
So moved.
sequencing,
So moved.
is there a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. Now then, what we'll move on to is the public comment, and this is a time at which people can speak on items on the agenda that are not scheduled for a public hearing. The time is set aside for the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other agenda items, which would include the Prescott Preserve, and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Please note that the Planning Commission is prohibited from taking items not listed on the posted agenda. Typically, we allow 3 minutes, and I think that works with 10 people signed up to speak, rather than occasionally we'll step that down to 2 minutes, but I think we have enough time to give everybody 3 minutes if they're interested in speaking. And the commission will not respond to you individually when you speak. So if you have questions, you have to say those and ask them of staff at another time. Testimony for public hearings may be offered at this time or at the time that the public hearing comes up on the agenda. Members of the public who would like to comment on consent items or new business items are directed to comment under this portion of the agenda. So if you are all with me still, could we please have the speakers called up in the order in which they've submitted cards?
Yes. Madam Chair, our first speaker is Russ Uthi, who will be followed by Kurt Kosick. Chair, as Mr. Uthi is coming up, I did want one point of clarification from you. We do have the applicants for item 4C, which will now be our first order of business on the Zoom call. Are you allowing them to take questions from the commission following the staff presentation, or would you like them to speak now? Typically,
I'm sorry, these are for the people who are presenters.
the applicant, yes.
I would like them to speak when we get to that item.
Thank you. Mr. Uthi, you have 3 minutes.
Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission, for the record, my name is Russ Uthi, Chairman of Sonora Sunrise Organization. It has been 2 years since a transfer of ownership occurred between the golf course owner and Oswitz Trust, where it has created irresponsible getting issues before the Planning Commission. While it is a nice thing to say, and what I'm alluding to is that the word went out that I was the one that brought this to your attention. Nothing has been further from the truth. I don't deserve that honor. So while it was a nice thing to say, I don't believe that I'm here because of me. As chairman of Sonora Sunrise Neighborhood, the largest in the city, I have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the interests of our residents, and I don't take this lightly. I have met with the city manager, the mayor, the planning director, code enforcement, and other key staff, for which I have the highest regard for. And it is frustrating to take this long work with Oswitz to get this here, 2 years. I don't know if the city has received a completed pre-application and other necessary information required, so it would be irrespectable for me to ask you if there is anything that we have not been alerted to. It's only fair for us to be known to what's going on and what has not been approved. Please be advised that I have not spoken with anyone in this great city that is against the proposition, not one person. However, we are concerned about the procedural issues and the aesthetics afterwards. I want to go in, I lost my place here, but anyway, we're dealing with Palm Springs Country Club, 25 years in the rough, and it's rough, deserty. Nothing has been done until recently. There's some activity. Also with Bel Air Greens, sitting there isolated. One other thing I want to mention is that the people that live surrounding the country club preserve, our property value, and I took it and it's a very ultra-conservative count, over $250 million in real estate that's affected by this. This is important. This is why people are so up in arms and concerned about taking 2 years to get to this level. So I hope that we all can come together to work. I don't think it's wise for the commission to rule on this tonight because there's so many unanswered questions that need to be resolved. And go to the agency and just here to try to pull this community back together again, which is really divided because of this issue.
Mr. Youth, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kurt Kosick, followed by Abby Winston.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Kurt Kosick. I'm a year-round resident of Palm Springs. I live in the Ascena community. I'm a certified California naturalist from UC Riverside Palm Desert. I'm a member of the San Bernardino Valley Audubon Society. I'm a volunteer at Prescott Preserve, where I lead the twice-a-month bird walks. I want to thank the Planning Commission for allowing me this time to speak on behalf of my support of item 4C on the Planning Commission agenda. I do support the staff recommendation, which is for approval of the landscape plan amendment. I ask the commission modify or remove some of the conditions as requested in the letter from Oswald Land Trust. These conditions would only delay this incredible improvements that are planned for the Prescott Preserve. My reason for supporting the OLT modification is that it will enhance birding habitat at Prescott Preserve. You may not be aware that Prescott Preserve has become a birding hotspot here in the Coachella Valley. We have now over 184 species of birds there. The only place greater record of birds in the Coachella Valley is at Coachella Valley Preserve, Thousand Palms Oasis. These totals do not include locations at the north end of the Salton Sea or Whitewater Preserve. Over the 2 years that I've been leading the bird walks there, I've had over 500 folks attend my walks. Of the 500 folks who attended my walks is a mix of local, seasonal residents, and visitors. Over 1,300 e-bird lists have been submitted for Prescott Preserve. This amount is great because of the easy access Prescott Preserve provides. I also want to share with you some numbers. Outdoor recreation is an $8 billion industry, and birding is a $41 billion part of it. I can get footnotes for you if you want them. Birding has exploded over the last several years, whereupon a third of the adults have birded. We are so lucky to have this exceptional location right in the middle of Palm Springs. Thank you again for allowing me to speak here tonight. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Abby Winston, followed by Jason Mascarenas.
Hi. Hello, Commissioners. I did send you some detail by email, much more information than I'll say here in 3 minutes. But first of all, I want to recognize and commend the staff. They have been diligent and professional throughout this whole process, which has been basically a push-pull, I think, for them from every side. And there are a lot of different sides. So I think what they produced was well-reasoned, recommendation that balances protecting the city and its residents with property owners' rights. I think the only other thing I would add that they did not address is funding. So I don't know if this is possible, but I do believe that Oswitz has essentially promised the community that they are going to manage this land in perpetuity. And as far as I can tell, they have not raised any money to do that, and they have not been required at any level to have an endowment that would do that. I live 5 feet. My patio is 5 feet from the preserve border, and There have been times in this 2 years when it has felt dangerous in terms of fire hazard and palm trees that might be sick and dying. And I have gotten no response from Oswitz or a very negative response about owners versus bird habitat. So I think, again, the report and the recommendations are balanced and fair. I think there should be one added that would basically require, in that 2-year period, that Oswitz develop an endowment. I sent you numbers on my estimates of cost, and think that between $5 and $10 million is the appropriate amount. So I think as far as Oswitz's response to the recommendations is that, no, mostly the recommendations were right on and reasonable. Maybe the one about the paths, they do need to close them at some points in time, but I still think the city really should be the people in charge of when that can happen and when it can't. That's it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jason Macarenas, followed by Mark Dubose.
Good evening. My name is Jason Mascarenas. I am a resident of Palm Springs for over 25 years, full-time, year-round, one of those guys. I've been equestrian for 40 years. I've been affiliated with Los Compadres and Desert Riders since I moved here, past president of both organizations, both established 1930, 1939, respectively. I just want to say that I've had the pleasure of riding the now the Oswit Preserve, and I know that's not the correct name, but the Bud Fear Trail has been an important, intricate part of both organizations. Los Compadres have held throughout their history, annual events that bring in equestrians from all over the valley and other parts of the state and even some parts of the country. And have also had the pleasure of utilizing the Bud Fear Trail. We have, at any given time during the season, and as we all know, Palm Springs is seasonal as far as like major outdoor activities. I mean, the few of us diehards are riding still, occasionally on some of the hot trails, but most people don't come in until September and stay throughout the season, at which point our organizations have held these special rides at any given time. We've had up to 25 or over equestrians ride through the Bud Fear Trail. The best part about that, we have an equestrian sign that helps us cross the street on Farrell when it's busy, and the stop sign is elevated higher, so we don't have to dismount. We can just press the button from that and go on. We are considered, and we do consider ourselves as horseback people and equestrians, stewards of trails. We respect the trails. We try to keep them clean. We rarely venture off trails. The Bud Fear Trail is a unique trail to Palm Springs. I think that it really incorporates a lot of the important part of the history that makes people want to come here. I know at any given time I'm riding around the golf course or even through the preserve, and people are just happy to see horses, and most of the time really surprised to see them. So I just want to say that Los Compadres, and I'm sure you'll hear from Desert Riders, are in support of maintaining the Bud Fear Trail. We have a good rapport with the Oswit Land Trust people, and we hope to continue that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mark Dubose, followed by Doug Evans.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark DeBose. I'm a condominium owner at the Mesquite Country Club condominiums. On this preserve, if I had my choice, I would have preferred it was left as a golf course and the land not split up. We are going to have a situation with this land being split up because 13 acres was retained by the original owner, and they plan to develop it. The city has an easement on that. I hope in the future the city does not waive that easement and does not allow any development on this property. And I think that's across the board for this whole property. I hope that property was set aside as open space, and I hope it remains that way. If it's going to be a preserve, I would like to have more discussion about what type of preserve it's going to be. The idea, there's a lot of stuff on the internet and everything about the coyotes moving in. There are coyotes moving in. People have had their dogs bit by coyotes. I've seen the YouTube video of it. That's not really what I think we want to encourage to come into the city. If there's a way to develop the preserve without encouraging coyotes to move in, I think that would be better for the dogs and the humans and the coyotes themselves, because having coyotes come into the city limits sounds great and it makes me feel good, but it's not really good for the coyotes. They get hit by cars. They are more likely to have rat poison in their systems, and it's not a healthy place for them to be. They need to be in the outskirts of town and out in the actual wilderness areas, not in the middle of the city. So if there would be something that could be done about that, which I've seen a lot of the letters that you'll have in the packet address the concern about coyotes, but no one's really talking about that much. The other thing, coyotes have to eat. They eat rabbits mainly, or rats, and they have to have, rabbits eat grass. There's not a lot of grass left on the Prescott Preserve any longer. There is grass on our property. So you're gonna have the rabbits are gonna come to our property to eat, and the coyotes are gonna go there to hunt them. And that's just the way nature works. So I don't know what can be done about that or how to address that, but I think that's something that I would hope the Planning Commission would consider. I saw in the packet, I think Oswald has objected to some of the conditions. The ones I'm concerned about are planning number 1, which is about water efficient landscaping. Of course, I think that should be reviewed by the city and so on. The other one I'm really concerned about is engineering number 13, which has to do with flood control. And I think the comment by Oswald was that they're not doing anything with the flood channel, so therefore, the main channel, so therefore that should not apply to them. However, it's not the main channel that's concerned. It's when we have something like Hillary and the water comes out of the main channel, and then it's on the open land or flowing across land that is designed or should be designed for the water to move away from us. My particular condo is in the 100-year flood zone, and so I am concerned about that personally. I don't want to have any changes made to the property that are going to increase my flood risk of my property and result in my property being flooded.
Our next speaker is Doug Evans, followed by David Lottie.
I haven't started yet. Can I get my full 3 minutes? Thank you. Members of the Planning Commission, staff, I want to thank the staff and Oswald for a last-minute fire drill this week. We did not know that this is going forward. And by the way, I'm Doug Evans with Desert Riders. I'm the president of Desert Riders Trails Fund. And we have been building and maintaining trails in the Palm Springs area and virtually every city in the Coachella Valley since 1930. We're self-funded. We're very proud of our work. And for a long time, we actually did trail maintenance for the city of Palm Springs and shared costs with the city. But the fire drill, we didn't know this item was on the agenda as a lot of people did until about Sunday. And we got surprised by seeing the Planning Commission agenda. So we had a lot of questions starting Monday, and I came in and saw Mr. Robinson, I think before he had a cup of coffee. And I've been corresponding with the planning director almost daily since. We think we've got clarification about the Bud Fear Trail, but there's a few things I'd just like to bring to your attention. We want the commission to say that you understand all you're approving is a landscape plan that has nothing to do with trails. That is what Oswald has told us, and I think they've also told the city staff that. The exhibits and some of the material I've provided to you that Oswald submitted as part of their application, they show an equestrian trail that doesn't match up with the existing location of the Bud Fear Trail. It's my understanding that that was an oversight, that diagram should not have had that trail. We hope that Oswald would clarify that and that the trail would remain in the current location. It's worked for a long time. It's a good trail. It's a safe trail for horses. Along that same line, we just want the legislative history correct, so that when we're all not here and somebody picks up this permit, Chris might be here for a while, picks up this permit, they understand it. They understand what was approved and what was not approved. And we just want to make sure that there's no misunderstandings in the future about the Bud Fuhr Trail being in a good location today. You know, the Bud Fuhr Trail is a pre-existing condition. When Oswett purchased the property, they purchased all the improvements: sidewalks, defunct golf course, bridges, equestrian trail, sidewalks, and other things. So it's been there for a long time, and we used to ride this wash a long time before Mesquite Country Club. We understand.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Lottie, followed by Greg Thomas.
Hello, my name is David Lottie, and I serve on the board of directors for Oswett Land Trust. I'm also a master gardener, certified by the University of California Cooperative Extension, and can't wait to get my hands dirty in Prescott Preserve. I'd like to remind everyone, Prescott Preserve was a gift. It was a gift, a very generous gift to the city and to Oswett Land Trust by Brad Prescott. And we thank him for his generosity. The Prescott Foundation, I probably should say, but Brad is behind the Prescott Foundation, so we thank him for that, his generosity. I agree with Russ Youthy. We're impatient too. We want to get this thing going, and we're hoping that we can get the lawsuit resolved soon so that we can get some state funding to do the restoration and complete it. So we're very anxious to get started. This is one part of that process. We thank you for your time. We're also very happy that the Desert Riders have an equestrian trail through Prescott Preserve. It's beautiful when we see the horses go through. They're part of our nature, and we love them. And it is an easement. We're correct, and we're very happy to have them at Prescott Preserve. I'm also available as backup for Jane, assuming Jane can't get on Zoom, but I think she's on Zoom. So, thank you.
Greg Thomas? Okay, so Madam Chair, that concludes the speakers that we have in the audience, unless anyone arrived late and hasn't submitted a speaker card yet. Otherwise, we will move to the online speakers. You can just hand it to Anita. So I will, if you are online and you wish to speak, please raise your hand now, and I will allow you to speak on this item. Okay. I have one additional speaker, Aaron Leader. All right, Mr. Leader, you have 3 minutes, or I know that you're here with Jane. You can also choose to speak after the staff presentation as the applicant, your choice.
I will speak after the, as an applicant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, we have no further speakers.
That completes our public comment. The next item to address is the consent calendar. Do I have a motion for acceptance of the consent calendar?
I motion to accept the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Second.
Voice vote, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously approved.
Thank you.
We have no items to discuss that have been excluded from the consent calendar. So now is when typically we would move into public hearings, but instead we're going to hear item 4C. This is a request by Oswald Land Trust for a minor amendment to Plan Development District PDD 153 to allow the restoration of approximately 90 acres of the 120-acre former golf course and country club site into a native desert habitat and nature preserve. The site is located between Sunrise Way and El Cielo Road, north of Mesquite Avenue, Zone PDD 153/W, Section 24. The case number is 5.0303, PD 153. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So just like you said, this is, let me just re-emphasize that the application before you tonight is a minor plan development district amendment, meaning that there was a previous approval on that same site. The use is not being changed. However, there is a minor amendment to the landscape design that the City Council approved in 1983. Now, here are the components of that amendment. Number one, it is to modify the associated final landscape plan originally approved by the City Council in 1983. Here is what it's going to do: removing dried vegetations, deceased trees, and debris from the site. It will restore the former golf course to a native habitat and nature preserve. It will install public access along designated hiking and biking trails. The scope of work is approximately 90 acres of the approximately 120-acre site. The original PD designated the site as open space. The preserve will remain as open space. And Madam Chair, that is very essential to this application. So there is a council resolution that dedicated that site as an open space. That is not going to change. That intent will continue. It will always remain as an open state. And I also want to mention that typically minor amendments are approved by the Director of Planning Services. However, in this case, he realized the number of interest by the public, the scope and size of the project. So he decided to refer the matter to you. And that is why this application is before you tonight. Just want to give you a very brief background of that site itself. So on September 21, 1983, the City Council approved Plan Development District 153 and tentative tract map 18370 for a 600-unit condominium complex. We also include a clubhouse and an 18-hole golf course under resolution number 14814. And then on December 19, 1984, the City Council approved final development plans for the golf course portion of the PDD under resolution number 15540. And again, on September 18, 1985, the council accepted a grant of open space easement from the then developer of the Mesquite Country Club under resolution number 1548. And that is why that site is an open space and it will remain as an open space. The residential uses and the golf course were developed in the 1980s. However, the golf course was abandoned by the ownership about 3 years ago. So again, the proposed amendment will keep the property as an open space. I'm just going to go through some slides to show you, to give you an idea of where this location and the size of the project is. So this is an overall plan for the site. As you can see, the size of the site extends from El Cielo to the east all the way to Sunrise Way, to the east, and to the south, bordered by Mesquite Avenue, and to the north by Ramon Road. So the next slide shows is what the applicant called the illustrative site plan, which shows some of the notable features on the site. So there is the Barista flood channel, the Taquit Creek, and then the equestrian trail on that site. And this is just to show how the restoration will look like. It's called the Habitat Restoration Zone Plan. So this is what the applicant submitted so far. And these are some of the features that the site will have once the restoration is complete. It will have a learning and gathering areas. It will have road outcroppings. It will have burrowing owl den, and it will have places for photo opportunities for the visitors. Again, this is just showing some of the existing tree canopy and large understory vegetation on the plan and on the site. Here are some pictures of the existing condition of the site. These pictures were, as a matter of fact, taken yesterday. So as you can see, most of the site is now having dead vegetation and dead trees and some debris on the site. These are additional pictures showing the current condition of the site, and according to the applicant, these are what the restoration will address. Again, additional photographs. These were again taken just yesterday, and the trail is there. You can see some of the debris along some of the trails. And again, you can see the condition of vegetation on the site. Now, these are examples of how the perimeter is going to look like once this restoration is complete. There will be, again, water-efficient landscaping that will be installed along the perimeters. So my presentation is very brief because, again, this is a minor amendment to an existing PD. There is no development that is proposed on the site, and that is what constitutes a minor. And again, the use is not being changed. It is an open space. As the Plan Development District designated the site, it will remain an open space. So in conclusion, Madam Chair, if you look at the conditions of approval, we did receive a letter from the applicant wanting some of the conditions, or if not all of them, be removed. We did not agree with the applicant. However, there is one condition, and that is administration condition number 9, ADM number 9, which speaks about park fees. We want that to be deleted. And then adopt the categorical exempt pursuant to section 15304 of CEQA guidelines. Approve the proposed PD landscape amendment plans subject to the attached conditions and any other additional condition that the commission may deem necessary for the project. That will conclude my presentation. I do have other staff from other departments. The city engineer is here, and a city engineer associate is also here. So if you have questions for staff, and I believe the applicant is on Zoom, right?
Yes.
To answer your questions.
And I just have one clarification regarding administrative condition number 9, just to help you and the public understand why we're recommending that approval. It requires the payment of park fees or dedication of land for park fees, which is not triggered by the scope of this project. We would typically apply that to something that is subdivision, that again is establishing new development, and going through a subdivision process under state law. It is not applicable here. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just one more final note. So as you can imagine, we've received tons of public comment letters. As of this afternoon, we've received a total of 128 letters. We have them broken down by position. So for instance, the number of those in favor is 87, the opposed 34, and neutral 7. That did not influence a staff recommendation in any way, but I just feel that for public consumption, that ought to be brought up during this hearing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, that's helpful. Before I open this up to commissioners to ask questions of staff, I'm guessing that everybody has a number of questions. I know that I do. But I'd like to ask the Director Hadwin, over the course of this week, subject to the amount of input and dialogue you've had with people in the audience and with the applicant, I believe that there's some revision that you are proposing to the conditions of approval. I know that I personally have spoken with you and we've talked about some things, and I suspect other commissioners may have as well. I think it would be helpful for all of us to hear the revised conditions of approval that are being recommended, not all of them, there are plenty, but there are a handful that are being revised, and it would be helpful to have those read into the record and to allow all the commissioners to hear those and be able to direct our questions towards the revised conditions rather than the original ones. So with that being said, I would like to ask you to read them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And just bear with me 1 second. I just need to confirm one information. I don't believe under project-specific conditions, number 1, restoration, I don't believe this has been significantly changed, but I will read into it for the record anyways. It would read, restoration, the project shall be limited to the restoration of the former golf course to suit a native desert habitat and nature preserve by restoring native, non-invasive vegetation species to include water-efficient plants and water-adjacent plants such as desert willows and California fan palm or Washingtonian filifera. Number 2, under wildlife species, we've just kind of shifted this wording a little bit to be a little bit more inclusive of what the intent of the project is. And it would read, the restoration project shall be developed to support the wide range of native desert flora and fauna, including migratory and non-migratory species. Number 3, and this was related to park rangers, and I think in concert with discussions that we had with the applicant, as well as other feedback that was going on, and in consultation with our attorneys, we've pivoted a little bit from what that was trying to achieve, and realizing that there may be other security measures that need to be considered in addition to patrols, and so we would like that condition to read, security. The applicant shall be required to prepare a security plan subject to approval by the Director of Planning Services. Such security plan shall require that the applicant provide regular patrol of the preserve to prevent loitering, illegal dumping, and encampments of the unhoused citizens on the property, and may also identify what hours the preserve is closed to the public where necessary for public health and safety or for maintenance purposes. Number 4, access to public trails. We've made some changes here, and this is in response to conversations around where the public access is permitted and pets. And so we would instead say public, including on-leash pets, access to the on-site trails as required by recorded easements in favor of the city shall be maintained throughout the site, which shall remain open space per council resolution number 15648. And that's that resolution that Edward mentioned earlier. And finally, in terms of revisions, fire department number 10. And again, this is in response to a number of conversations that we had. We're just giving it a little bit more flavor to say excessive weeds, grass, vines, or other growth that, in the opinion of the fire department, is capable of being ignited and endangering property shall be cut down and removed by the owner or occupant of the premises. So we wanted to give more clarity there that it's the fire department that should be making that determination. Those are the revisions, Madam Chair. I know there are other additional conditions that you may consider, and I assume we'll hold off on those for now. Or did you want me to read those?
Let's go ahead, and I think that it's important because we have all read hundreds of emails and heard from our constituents about some of their concerns. And I think if you tell us, or if we have a full listing of those, it might save some of the dialogue or answer some of the questions, and it might spur additional thoughts or questions from the commissioners.
Absolutely. So these would be additional conditions to be added. So under project-specific conditions, we would add number 5, equestrian access. The applicant shall ensure that the existing public equestrian access, as contemplated by the general plan's open space and circulation element, is maintained through the property. Such trails shall be kept free of debris and maintained in a safe and accessible condition. So we're hoping that that addresses the desert riders' concerns that were raised earlier. Number 6, predatory animals. The applicant shall collaborate with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to educate residents regarding best practices on how to protect themselves, their pets, and their properties from predatory animals such as coyotes and bobcats, which are known to be present in the city. Such information shall be disseminated in a manner determined in an education plan to be approved by the Director of Planning Services. So we would essentially be asking for some kind of education plan, which in conversations with Oswit was something that they would be considering to do anyways, as they do through many of their sites. And through that education plan, we would determine how that information gets disseminated. Number 7, coyote best management practices. The applicant shall consult with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife on best management practices to minimize conflicts between the public and coyotes, and shall identify a process for informing the public of those best management practices as part of the education plan. So again, responding to some of the concerns we've heard about coyotes, and Oswit can work on that as part of the education plan in terms of disseminating information on how to mitigate those concerns. Number 8, project timeline. The applicant shall commence the planned restoration work within 6 months of this approval and demonstrate ongoing progress toward implementation of the entire restoration and landscape plan. And just to give a little context to this, there is a condition elsewhere that speaks to a 2-year timeline for this project. That is meant, and that is a standard condition we include in a lot of our entitlements. That is the vesting condition. So we are not contemplating, given the unique circumstances around this project, that all work will be done in 2 years. I think Oswit can speak to this certainly in more detail when they speak in a moment, but this is going to be an ongoing project, and so we don't foresee that it will happen in 2 years, but rather that the work should begin soon to vest the project, and then we'll continue on an ongoing basis. So number 9, review of progress. The Planning Commission shall receive an annual update from the applicant on their progress and may, at such time that that update is considered, amend the conditions of approval as necessary to ensure that the site is being maintained and managed so as to protect public health and safety. This requirement shall remain in effect until such time that the restoration work is complete or at such time that the Planning Commission determines it is no longer necessary. And so this starts to get to some of the concerns that we heard about, will the work happen and will the site be maintained appropriately? And we feel that sort of an annual update to you, as we do on many of our entitlement projects, on their progress is probably the best way to handle that conversation. And then finally, property maintenance. The applicant shall resolve any maintenance and/or security issues raised by the city's police, fire, or code enforcement departments within 30 days of receiving notification of such violation or complaint, and to the satisfaction of the notifying department. If complete resolution is not feasible within 30 days, the applicant shall submit a detailed plan and schedule for resolution within let me reread that last sentence. If complete resolution is not feasible within 30 days, the applicant shall submit a detailed plan and schedule for resolution within 30 days of being noticed of the issue. Those are the extent of the additional conditions we've been chewing on in response to a lot of the public comments, as well as conversations with the applicant.
Thank you. Now we'll open up for members of the commission who would like to ask questions of staff, and that would include our attorney, who is available to us virtually. After questions are answered by staff, we'll have the applicant respond to the questions in dialogue and give us a presentation of anything else that they think we need to be aware of, and then we can ask questions of the applicant. So I see Mr. Miller.
I just have actually just a couple. I want to thank the staff for putting together those revised conditions. It really addressed a lot of the concerns I saw through the emails and that came up tonight. But one clarification on revised condition number 4, access to trails. One of the issues that was raised by the applicant, and that I actually had when reviewing, was the phrase "at all times." And I think there was a concern that this is not to be used at 11 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't hear that you had addressed that time issue in that condition, unless I missed it.
We did remove it. So it would say public access to the on-site trails as recorded easements in favor of the city shall be maintained throughout the site, which shall remain, where did we address that? You know what?
Which shall remain open space.
Which shall
per
remain open space.
resolution
So we
number
removed the reference there to at all times, but then if you go to revised condition number 3, which I know you don't have in front of you, that is where we said that the security plan may also identify what hours the preserve is closed to the public where necessary for public health and safety or for maintenance purposes. So we are trying to allow, through the security plan and through the condition related to access to public trails, to give them the flexibility that they need to appropriately and safely manage the site.
Okay. And then one further clarification on the equestrian access, specifically the Bud Fuhrer Trail. I think it sounded like it was meeting all of the concerns of the desert riders, except I'm not sure if it really spelled out that the location of the equestrian trail should either be the same as or at least very similar to what is existing today. And I think that deserves to be.
And I might suggest that we ask that of the applicant as well, in terms of what their intentions are and in terms of what the sort of legal context around that is. We have not seen an easement that provides the locational requirement that you're speaking of, Commissioner Miller. And so the city feels legally that it would be tenuous to impose that as a
Okay.
condition through this process. But I think the Oswit folks have certainly made certain commitments that they can speak to.
Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you. Yes, I also compliment you guys on the clarifications. That's helpful. I have a question about access to trails, number 4, the condition number 4. And I'm just wondering why we're not at this point going a little further than that. Most parks have hours of operation, which makes it easier for the authorities to enforce off hours, no access during certain hours. City parks, even Central Park in New York, is off limits during certain hours. So I'm just wondering why we didn't, in this case, establish a routine closure period, so like we do with the other parks, because the way it's reworded, it's I think it's going to be harder to manage. It's going to be harder for the public to know when the park is closed, because it's just up to Oswit or Prescott Reserve to determine they need to close it for some maintenance purposes. So I'd like us to consider revising it again and establishing, if the applicant is agreeable to it, establishing a standard time every night when the park is just closed to the public. Say, 8 to 10, 8 to 7, or 8 to 6, or something like that.
Understood, and I think our intention was to catch that through the security plan that would need to be developed with them to determine what those appropriate hours are, and I think that security plan could also include a reference to signage that indicates that, but certainly that would be, in conversation with the applicant at the discretion of the commission if you want to add additional language to condition 4.
If the applicant is agreeable to that, I think it would be far easier to manage if we establish hours that if the park is just closed or the preserve is just closed. Can you also please read number 3 again, the revised number 3?
Yes, and I apologize that these were kind of late breaking and not in your package. 3, security. The applicant shall be required to prepare a security plan subject to approval by the Director of Planning Services. Such security plan shall require that the applicant provide regular patrol of the preserve to prevent loitering, illegal dumping, and encampments of the unhoused citizens on the property, and may also identify what hours the preserve is closed to the public where necessary for public health and safety or for maintenance purposes.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just that last part of that sentence is where I would ask or think we can change that. Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Morrill, I see that your light is on.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Under number 3, rangers, I didn't hear anything about 24/7 rangers, and in the materials we got from Oswit, it didn't sound like they provide 24/7. But I'm mostly concerned, as the speakers who spoke earlier are, with fire, life safety issues, and who's monitoring the site. If there's no ranger on site, is there anyone monitoring to be sure that there isn't a fire somewhere? Or
So I think, again, the details of that can be worked out in a security plan, which, we would consult with our colleagues and other departments on. And I think that we can ask the applicant certainly what their intentions around that might be. I think a number of, I think, legitimate concerns were raised about imposing that condition on them, the cost, the sort of, obligation that would impose on them, and sort of the discrepancy with how we sort of monitor and manage our own open spaces. We aren't necessarily out monitoring or patrolling our parks 24/7 either. So I think some of the details will be resolved through the security plan, but that's certainly a point of discussion for you all to have.
Yeah, I thought maybe they could do some kind of remote monitoring or some kind of service to just, particularly in areas that aren't really visible from the streets, surrounding streets. The other thing I had in there, in the materials, it said that they needed this grant for an irrigation system. And I was curious about the irrigation system because in their material, in Oswit's materials, they talk about a self-sustained ecosystem. So,
Are you referring to the reference to irrigation in our water efficient landscaping condition? Planning 1?
I'm not exactly sure which section it was in, but it was one of the items that they had with cleaning brush and getting rid of dead trees. They talked about a modified irrigation system.
I think we can ask them what their intentions are. The condition that we've included is a standard condition that we include if they're not providing irrigation, or if the plants are native and don't require irrigation, then the condition is satisfied. So I think we can certainly ask the Oswit team when they join what their intentions around irrigation are. But if they're not installing any, we're not going to require that they do.
Right. And I was also wondering if the old sprinkler system was still there, if that had all been decommissioned or removed. I think that was it for questions. Thanks.
Commissioner Baker, do you have questions?
Thank you. Piggybacking on a few of the questions that have already been asked, I would advise that for the security plan, not only going to the planning commissioner, head of planning, we also involve the police department. I think they would just, as fire is coming in to say what are the best practices for fire abatement, we should also ask the police department what their input on making this site secure, especially since there are all these homeowners that live around it and there's not as much traffic as it was when it was a golf course. And second question was regarding public access. There was something about, there were so many documents this week, I've lost track of where this one was. But but there was something regarding public access because there really is no fence around the preserve. Even when it was a golf course, if you wanted to walk on at 12 o'clock at night, there was no one there to preclude you from doing so. So again, vis-a-vis those homeowners, I would not want this open space behind my home that basically is unmonitored overnight. It's just a strong concern.
And I think I hear the concern. I don't think that we are in a position to require that they fence or enclose the site. And then in terms of security, I think it's a conversation we can have with Oswit. Again, I think our thinking was as a minor modification, we're trying to condition this appropriately based on sort of the level of change that is being proposed, and not sort of being too onerous on them.
No, I understand. I mean, every golf course in the city is, you can basically walk into any golf course in the city in the middle of the night. Yeah.
So trying to be equitable was our goal, but that's certainly for you to discuss.
David? Okay, I have a handful of questions, or a couple of questions. Most of these are constructed in response to the letters and the emails that we received, that when I looked at my materials and I couldn't answer the question myself and I couldn't figure out what it was, I thought I should at least ask on behalf of the people who had taken time to write to us. A lot of the, and this is probably for the attorney, a lot of the questions or a lot of the comments that we received were from people who may or may not support the project, but who were wanting to advocate that it that we not make a decision tonight, because they say that there's an outstanding lawsuit between the homeowner association and the applicant, and they thought that there should be resolution of that before we made a decision. The city is not party to that, and I don't know that there is any reason why a court would take into consideration the decision by the Planning Commission. That I don't know enough about the suit. I would guess that the two are unrelated, but I'd like to hear what staff or the attorney's position is regarding a decision to be made by the Planning Commission. Is this something that could impact the homeowners through their HOA and their impending litigation?
Sure, and I think we can certainly give this to Mr. Priest to answer from staff's perspective. That is a civil dispute between neighbors, and the city is not a party, and so we typically, per our planning processes, take the position that we are working with an owner, an applicant for this property, and not influenced by civil matters. But I'm sure Mr. Priest can elaborate on that much better than I can.
Thank you, Mr. Hadwin, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Commission. Pleasure to talk with you this evening. No, the civil lawsuit is between private parties. It does not affect the city's decision in this case. Obviously, it's one of many factors related to the project, but it does not preclude the city from taking action this evening to move this, to render a decision.
Thank you. One of the other issues that was brought up by a number of our correspondents dealt with the purchase and sale agreement between the owner and the previous owner, and a memorandum of understanding between the two. I would guess again that the city is not party to these agreements, and that does not impact a decision we made, but several people seem to think that we should delay a decision or these issues should be addressed.
Whether to take action or delay is within your discretion. But again, we believe those are civil matters between private parties. It does not preclude you to make a decision or force you to delay a decision. You can move forward this evening.
Okay, so I presume that if the decision were to approve the minor landscape modification, that modified document would be governing the use of the property, even if the sale for some reason were to revert to the previous owner or to be passed on. It stays with the land and not with the owner. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that I was most, I'll say, disturbed by in reading the comments that we got was a letter written by, I don't remember the name of the author, but they took the time to recap the experience of the city over the last 2 years with trying to get the applicant to comply with city requirements, both of trying to get them to submit an application for the minor modification, trying to get them to abate code compliance issues, trying to get them to do a number of things, including maintaining the property, cleaning it up, and following through with the paperwork that was required. And it seems, and was disturbing because it looked like it was an uphill battle for the city staff, and that there wasn't a great deal of cooperation or much cooperation at all coming from the applicant. So I'm concerned about the future, and if we approve the modification, there are a whole bunch of conditions. What kind of leverage? I don't see leverage or tools that really have to ensure compliance. We did have somebody suggest, I don't think it was a bond, they were suggesting some other financial tool that would be allow us to have greater leverage. And I'm wondering if that could be, something like that could be added as a condition.
Mr. Hadwin, I thought did I hear you there, or otherwise I can
No,
address
please go
this.
ahead, Mr. Priest. Yes, thank you.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair. Staff and the city attorney's office have been working together to come up with these amended conditions, as Mr. Hadwin has read to you earlier this evening. Whether to require guaranteed financing or an endowment or some sort of financial guarantee like that, we don't believe that there would be legal authority to go that far. But we have attempted in these amended conditions to bring these issues into the conditions to give them some enforceability. You know, the risk you have with any project is that it may not go forward, and that happens with any project. But you know, again, we are optimistic that this one will go forward, and that these amended conditions will come into effect and be utilized.
So,
I have a legal question on that. What about insurance? Since the city is quasi a party to this, I'm thinking of anyone injuring themselves on the property, or say they're there overnight and they trip on a rock or break an arm or something. Is there some required insurance where the city is also a named insured?
We do that routinely as a matter of contracting, but adding an insurance requirement for a land use approval, I have not seen that. Mr. Hadwin, have you seen that? Typically, that's something that a private property owner will secure, for their own interests, for liability protection, things like that. But I've not seen that as a land use condition.
I would agree, not in this context, no.
Thank you.
and we do have the indemnification as one of our conditions of approval.
That is correct.
Okay. And my last question is about vector control, specifically about mosquitoes. I think one of the changes that we're seeing in the modification is going from having water features, ponds that would have been circulating regularly. As I understand what is being proposed, there seem to be, for lack of a better word, stagnant ponds and fewer of them, which is a concern to me because we have problems with mosquitoes here, and West Nile virus seems to be with us every year. So I'm wondering if our conditions of approval, if projects like this go to vector control so that they have a chance to review them and add any conditions, or is this something that's been discussed at all?
From the look on my face, you can probably tell no. I've not sort of encountered that here. So I think it's certainly a conversation we can have with the applicant and then react appropriately.
I believe during our tour we took with the applicant several months ago, the retention basins are actually run by DWI, the water department, and there is constant circulation. So that water is piped in daily.
Okay.
So it's not a stagnant pond.
Okay. All right, then.
Madam Chair, that, hypothetically, if stagnant water were to accumulate, the city would have its code enforcement remedies to deal with that. Very similar to if you're doing a sweep of green pools in a neighborhood.
That's right, you can get emergency abatements for that. I'd forgotten that. Okay.
So we could do that potentially. It's an aggressive course of legal action, but West Nile's not anything to mess with either. And so we've done that in various cities where you go on what we call a green pool sweep, and we drain the pools, or we clean it up as appropriate on an emergency basis. That's hypothetical, if we had something like that in this property. But I'm just letting you know that in theory that is available if necessary.
Thank you. Thank you. And I lied. I have one more question. And this one, I might need the city engineer, who I saw someplace here, to address. Riverside County Flood Control. To me, I'm very concerned about the flood channel going through the property because we have a lot of rain these days, and we have a lot of homes, as one of the speakers mentioned, that are in the floodplain. And maintaining that channel is critically important, in my opinion, to protect the property of the surrounding neighbors. And I noticed in the history of what has been done in the last 2 years is that the applicant has gone ahead and deposited surplus rock or spoils. It actually looks like it's broken up concrete foundations or something in the flood channels, and that code compliance was trying to get that addressed. So I'd like to see if it makes sure that the city engineer is satisfied with the language in these conditions, or if there's anything else that you would suggest from your dealing with Riverside County flood control in the past that could give the city greater leverage to making sure that if conditions are not complied with, this is one that really is.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Joel Montalvo, I am the city engineer. So you bring up a very good point, and that's why engineering 13 condition is there. It is intended for the applicant to coordinate, talk to, present the project to Riverside County Flood Control, and to ensure that Riverside County Flood Control has a say in how that project is either developed or maintained in perpetuity. So that's why that condition is added. The teeth, if you will, that could be added, and from the dais and the commission can add, is a requirement for that condition to be met prior to any grading activities taking place. So that is not set in this condition, but that is something that can be done as well. So what that would look like is the applicant talks to Riverside County Flood Control. Riverside County Flood Control asks if they need an easement or works with them, and then until we receive a letter from Riverside County Flood Control that they are satisfied with how the project is being developed and is not impacting the drainage of the Tahquitz Creek channel, then we would issue a grading permit, and we would hold until such time that that letter comes in from Riverside County Flood Control. That is what the teeth, if you will, for that condition, if you chose to add it.
Thank you, that's helpful. All right, has anybody remembered other questions that they would like to ask staff?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, and actually it's, I think for Edward, it came up, I think, with what Vice Chair mentioned about the other acreage that's not included in this preserve. Will that property have to go through a tentative parcel map process to be split off legally, or because it apparently is all part of one plot?
So if I respond to that in any way tonight, I might be making an assumption that I'm not really aware of. But I can assure you that if in the future, if any development were to be proposed on that 30 acres, it will have to go through the review process, and it has to be conforming to the underlying plan development district.
And it would have to be conforming to a legal plot, I assume, too. So
Absolutely.
if it's in the future legally split off, they would have to go through a parcel map process.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's true.
And then whatever applicable planning entitlements apply to whatever that proposal looks like.
All right, do any other commissioners have questions for staff? Hearing none, I'd like to ask the applicant if you would like to respond to some of the things that you've heard here, or offer a presentation for us to consider before we in turn ask you questions.
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Jane Garrison. I'm the founder and executive director of Oswit Land Trust. And first, I just want to thank the staff and the Planning Commission. This has been a very long process. I also want to note that Oswit Land Trust, our board of directors, made the decision to not post anything about this meeting on social media, and nor did we send out any alerts to any of our over 5,000 supporters because we did not want to inundate the Planning Commission with letters. So the over 100 letters of support that you received were just through word of mouth. So I'm just glad we didn't generate thousands more for you to look at. What I'd like to do real quick, because I know I have 3 minutes, I just want to address some of the points that were brought up, and then I'll leave Aaron Leiter to address the others that I don't get to. So one of the things, we love horses. We're happy that we've been working with the Desert Riders, and we will continue to have a trail for the Desert Riders to come and to make sure that the horses are safe and we get to see those beautiful horses walking on our preserve. I thank you to the commissioners who addressed the issue with public access to trails. Oswett Land Trust now oversees over 10,000 acres with 6 different properties, and we are very strict about the hours that people are allowed to go onto our property because we care obviously very deeply to make sure that everyone is safe and our property is safe and there's no dumping, no encampments. So thank you for making the changes to that. And to talk about security, security is paramount to us. We work so hard to achieve grants that allow us to purchase properties, or a gift like this that was a gift to all of us in the community. We don't want to see anything happen to any of our properties. So we do have rangers who go by our properties. We have volunteer trail ambassadors, which I would encourage the community to sign up for. And we also have cameras on all of the properties that we own. So we are excited to share our security plan with the city. So thank you for welcoming that. There was a question about irrigation. We are keeping the irrigation. I would love to say that it's done. Irrigation is a hassle, but even when you plant native plants, they do require water until they get established. So the irrigation for now will remain. There was also a question about insurance, and I know it's not a situation for the city since this is private property, but Oswett Land Trust, unlike other land trusts, we actually do insure all of our properties, even though the state of California is amazing toward land trusts because people cannot sue us if they get hurt on our property because of California law. So I think that I addressed most everything in this short time that I have. Aaron will talk about the timing that we've been under, and also he can address mosquitoes. And I just want to say, if you didn't have any other questions, you know, we have an incredible opportunity here. We have an incredible opportunity and such a generous gift that was given to all of us for now and for future generations. And we hope that we can finally push this ball forward and create a preserve that we're all proud of and the community gets to enjoy, and was already featured in the New York Times. And so thank you for the hard work that the staff and the Planning Commission has put into this. And we take this very, very seriously. So thank you. And Aaron, if you can address those other 2 issues, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure, happy to. I don't think we have that same 3-minute time thing, Jane, but you're very efficient. So with Aaron Leiter, I am actually the treasurer of Oswett Land Trust. And I really do thank the staff and the Planning Commission for the time tonight, the work that was done. The presentation about the preserve was, you know, quite beautiful and everything. I do want you to know that we work with the city now in regards to security. We work with the, it's amazing, but some of the unhoused, they are very ambitious, and some of the things they can overnight. You can have a tent, and you can have an air conditioning system and a generator and a queen size bed. And we work with all of that, and we work with the city, and we also, at our own cost, pay to have a lot of that stuff removed. In regards to the ponds, I do want you to know that this excessive heat has pushed things over. However, we do have mosquito fish and in the ponds, and the circulation, as someone in the staff so beautifully stated, it's true, or the Planning Commission, the amount of water circulation goes through there is enormous. There's a lot of water. This time of year, our water bill with the ponds taking most of it is over $8,000 a month. And that's just to keep from, because of the evaporation and some of the irrigation that we use. We irrigate what needs to be irrigated. The established plans don't need to be irrigated, and that's been working out rather well. As far as the Tequitz River and as far as Riverside County flood control, none of our plans come within 100 feet or 100 yards, if I get corrected, of the drainage. So any of the conversations, some of these comments about flooding and all of that, it's a little, I have no idea where that's coming from. None of our plans change any of that at all. That's also part of the CEQA thing. We're not touching any flow of any water, diverting water. Any of the quote rocks, which were actually donated to the thing, none of them come near or touch the water channel. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. You should see, hopefully within 30 days, we are getting a irrigation plan for, aerating plan for the ponds. And there's going to be I know some people will think it's a fountain to look pretty, but actually it's another form of circulation, which helps the fish, the birds, and of course all the beautiful turtles that live in our ponds. And we work with, as mentioned, we work with code compliance. Also, just to give you an idea, Osgood Canyon spends almost $250,000 a year between security and utilities at the preserve, just even for the way the condition that is in now. And our volunteer force, which we encourage everyone to join, is amazing of what they accomplish on a daily level. And if there's any other questions, please address them to Jane. Thank you.
Do commissioners have questions of the applicant?
I didn't mention
Mr.
timeline.
Baker.
Hey, just one simple question. What are the hours of operation?
We do it dawn to dusk.
Okay.
As a general rule, is the easiest way. I think it's the simplest to explain.
And piggybacking on that, I assume at night it's just completely dark. There's no lighting anywhere. So anyone trying to go in after hours would be there in.
We actually, that's a good question. So we had thought about having hours, actual hours, like 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. But we have the front runners. We have some other walking clubs that like to start really early, and we don't want to take that away from them. And that's why we say dusk, actually sunrise to sunset, because then it's up. Our cameras that we have, which we will share with the planning department, with security, many of them are motion. So we know when an owl is landing in front of the camera. We know when someone who walks on one of our properties, and again, not just Prescott Preserve, we own lots of properties. We are alerted through our cameras. So they're not just for wildlife; they're for our security as well. And we haven't changed anything since it was a golf course as far as that. We don't have a fence up. The golf course didn't have a fence up. The only change is actually better because we do have trail ambassadors and we have cameras, which were not there when it was a golf course. Right. And just to note, when we took the property over, there were encampments and there were trash throughout the creek on that property. And I met with Riverside County Flood Control a couple months after we bought it, and we stood there and he said, I've never seen this property so clean.
Thank you.
I did want to, if I could interrupt for just a second, as far as the timeline goes, you were asking about the timeline. I believe the timeline, anything that they've ever asked us to do, it really, you guys explained it beautifully. If there is something from compliance that they want done, we can get it done immediately. We get it done immediately. If it's going to take a little bit longer to do, we stay in complete communication. And we've had this relationship with the city's folks that come out. What's so fascinating to us is that we buy the property and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later, there are all these problems. And I can assure you those things existed for years before we bought the problem, and somehow were left untouched, but they all became our burden. We spent close to $30,000 in the first 90 days of owning that property, cleaning it up. So we've actually been pretty good stewards of the property.
Commissioner Murphy.
Yes, I'm just asking for a clarification on the types of paths. I know that currently dogs, of course, have to be leashed at all times, are allowed on the, are not allowed on the nature trails, but they are allowed on the multi-purpose paths. Is that still accurate, and does that need to be reflected in any specific way in this application?
Yes, that, those are still accurate points. I don't believe it has to be in the application, because this, I understand, is about landscape and not trails, but that is still the case.
And perhaps if I could just clarify a little bit, as a private property, they can certainly restrict, public access on the balance of the property as they need to for the reasons that have been described. The city's interest in ensuring public access, which does include the leashed pets, is on the portions that there is an easement granted to the city for public access, and that, as I understand it, is the multi-use trail. Multi-purpose trail.
Okay, thank
so
you.
the condition as worded speaks to them ensuring public access as required by the easements, so the condition would allow us to have that conversation if we needed to.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morrell?
Yes, a lot of the concerns we received from the community had to do with fire and coyotes. That seemed to be pretty much a recurring theme in a lot of the letters we received. And I just wondered, I know you said you have cameras and you have rangers, but is there anyone, fires usually come up, when people are asleep, and I just wondered if anyone monitors those cameras after hours, or.
We are probably in the same situation that the city is on their property. So I know, we're probably better because we have cameras. I don't believe the city has cameras on all of their properties, but we actually were the ones that called the fire department for Bel Air Greens. We saw the fires first. So, none of us want a fire. So, we monitor the best that we can. We always ask the surrounding community to all of our properties to be the eyes and ears, not just Prescott Preserve, but all the properties that we own, both in Palm Springs and now outside of Palm Springs. So, and I think that's still important. The thing about Prescott Preserve is we have lots of eyes and ears that we have seen, as everyone knows. So hopefully there's never a problem, but if there is, we have the eyes and ears. And something to just address with coyotes, I see more people walking around Palm Springs than I see coyotes, but boy, what a hatred toward coyotes. We live in a world where every species has its importance. We can't pick and choose. And coyotes were in Palm Springs before we owned Prescott Preserve. They were on that property when it was a golf course. And coyotes will continue to be, hopefully, in all of Palm Springs and all of the desert. Because if there comes a time when there's no coyotes, we're all in trouble because there's a problem with our environment across the board.
I'd like to add.
Just the other thing I wanted to add about coyotes, and I know this would be probably difficult and expensive, but has anyone actually done a count to see, to get an idea how many coyotes are actually crossing or, living in the property, or no?
It's really difficult, and you can, California Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they go through the same problems. It's very difficult to count wildlife because you don't know if it's the same coyote or the same sheep who goes by the camera each time. It's estimated that we have 75 endangered bighorn sheep in the Palm Springs Mountains. How do they know that number? They use helicopters, they dart them, they color them to try to get a number, but they still don't know. It's very difficult to have a count. I can tell you that I have been on the preserve probably, thousands of times by this time. I have still only seen a coyote twice in all the times that I've been on that preserve. So, seeing a coyote walk by, people just need to remember, they're just walking by. They're not going to attack you. They're not going to hurt you. There just needs to be more education about it.
If there are no other questions from the other commissioners, I want to follow up with two. In the event that this modification is approved, I want to make sure I understand, because I know I'll get questions about it from the public, and that the public understands, has the right expectations. First one deals with time. Is this going to take 1 year, 12 years, 2 decades? I imagine there's a lot of fundraising that has to be accomplished. So what is your schedule, and will the work be phased in? And then the second deals with expectations of what it will look like. When I scan the QR code on the signage that's on the site, it takes me to pictures. This is our vision, or this is what we're going to do. The pictures that it goes to are of manicured landscapes where decomposed granite is carefully compacted around things, and the trees are pruned, and there are no, suckers growing up, and there's not dead branches, and they're beautiful. They're just beautiful. I don't know that that's what I would call a natural preserve, so I'm wondering what people should expect. Is the finished product, is it going to be heavily manicured, or will it be closer to what we're seeing now, which is a much more natural, rustic, rugged, unmanicured finish? What level of polish will be on it?
Let me take a second to answer both of those. First, as far as timing, if it weren't the fact that we got sued by the surrounding HOA, you would already be seeing plants being put in the ground. We worked so fast to apply for our planning grant, which we then came up with the plans with the experts that we worked with, and then we applied for our $7.2 million grant. The timing really right now is in the hands of the Mesquite Country Club HOA, because we would have gotten our $7.2 million grant on May 23rd, and all the HOA had to do was give us a statement that said that they understand that this property is privately owned and will no longer be a golf course, but will always remain as an open space preserve. With that statement, we would have received our grant, but the HOA was unwilling to give that. So our timing, to be honest, our timing is very much surrounded by this lawsuit. It's going to cost a lot of money to make the preserve what we want it to be. So as soon as the lawsuit goes away, then we will have the funds to get it to be what it looks like. However, in our grant, we actually complete the restoration in 3 seasons. It would be faster if we weren't in Palm Springs, because we have a short planting season. We would have it completed in 3 years. However, a nature preserve is an ongoing project. Because we're in the desert, some plants will die, others will need to be replaced. We may decide, let's put a beautiful butterfly garden over here. Nature preserves, because it's nature, are always changing and always growing, but they just get more and more beautiful. As far as the pictures that you saw and what it's going to look like, you may be referring to, we want to do a curb appeal buffer around the entire preserve. So if someone is just driving by, what they see is very, very different from someone who actually starts walking in. This was very strategic. So this creates visually something very beautiful if you're just walking by, but yet when you start walking 10, 15 feet into the preserve and you're looking to really commune with nature, you actually will then have a beautiful nature preserve. And what it will look like is what native vegetation looks. So if you drive by any of the open land that is beautiful with natives, with creosote and brittlebush and other native plants, mesquite trees and desert willow, that's what it will look like.
Thank you. Mr. Morrell, I see that your light is on. Did you have another question? All right. It sounds as though we've all had our questions answered, so I would look to my fellow commissioners and see if anybody has a motion that they would like to propose, or if they have comments that they would like to make before a motion.
Call the question.
I'll formally move it if you want me to read the right language in. I would move to adopt a categorical exemption per CEQA guidelines and approve the minor plan development district amendment consisting of a revised landscape plan, subject to the conditions as modified by staff and the Planning Commission and read into the record tonight.
Second.
Can I have a friendly amendment to withhold the grading permit until engineering condition number 13 has been satisfied? That was the one about the Riverside County flood control.
Right. And I, as per Joel Montavo, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
Are you fine with that?
You want the Riverside County flood control to, I was hearing that the Prescott Reserve does not actually, even though the floodplain goes through the reserve, they're not actually having any impact on it.
I heard that, but I also saw on the record that there had been deposits of rock and inert material in the waterway, so I don't know.
Can I just state something real quick?
Yes.
No, your time is
Thank
up.
you, but no.
Okay.
This is a time for the commissioners to discuss this.
I wouldn't agree to that if we can leave that off. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
I'd rather not have it in the conditions that we're voting on if we can skip it.
I will look back to the maker of the motion and the second to
Well, I
confirm
think it makes sense to put in the language, if determined to be necessary based on the work that's been done or being done. So if there's no deposits that have been placed into the flood channel, then obviously they don't need to go through that onerous process. But I think there's a question where exactly that deposit has been made. So I think it makes sense to have it in there, but as if determined to be required.
That's good, because then if it's not, then it's just not applicable.
All right. Yes, I will let the city engineer insert his wisdom.
Right, so the condition itself is really meant to protect the surrounding homeowners and everybody in general in the city of Palm Springs, right? This is a flood control channel. There is activity in that channel. They are stating that they will not be impacting the channel, but I think that's for Riverside County Flood Control to determine, to actually get a statement from Riverside County Flood Control to state that, and put some conditions on the proponent here to make sure that that channel is kept clear. Because the water doesn't just stay in this neat little location; it goes wherever it wants to. It's a big flood area, so that's why the condition itself was put in there. But to respond to the vice chair, to put a little bit more teeth into it prior to grading would be appropriate, and to have Riverside County Flood Control meet with the proponent and discuss, flood control maintenance and the activities that are going to be happening within the whole property that are adjacent to this Tackwoods Creek channel.
So if the suggestion was that we add language to say, if determined to be necessary, would you suggest that we say, if Riverside County Flood Control determines it necessary?
Correct. That's what we're looking for ultimately, is to have the county flood control, who is the flood control agency in this area, make that determination. And we would be satisfied.
And I'm also being reminded that he mentioned that we should have the timing for that to be prior to any grading activities on the site.
That was, we said,
And I'm
prior
fine with
to
that.
issuance of a grading permit.
Okay.
Okay.
I include that in my motion.
And I'm seeing nodding to accept it as a second. All righty. With that in mind,
I'm sorry, might I ask for clarification on what we are modifying to engineering condition 13 now? I think I'm a little lost.
So it would say something to the effect, prior to any grading activities on site, that they would go through that process with the flood control, and that just putting in clarifying language that would say, as if and when, if determined by the Riverside County Flood Control or whoever the entity. Yeah.
So engineering 13 would be prior to issuance of a grading permit.
Okay,
Does that work?
That's really the main change. And
understood.
All right, would anybody like, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Miller,
yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alain,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell.
Motion carries unanimously. So, thank you for those of you who joined us here tonight. I'm going to suggest that we have a 5-minute recess to allow you to depart and to allow us to stretch our legs for a moment.
Thank you.
We are back in session. The next item we'll proceed to is public hearing, item number A, a request by PSSC LLC owner for a tentative parcel map. I actually broke a contact lens in my eye today for the first time in 40 years of wearing contacts. Tentative parcel map number 38815, requesting to split one larger lot, forming a second lot equaling 3 acres for the purpose of future development consistent with the listed uses in the M1 light industrial zone located at APN 680-180-029, address 1500 South Genotry Trail, Zone M1. Case number is STM 2024-0004. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Palm Springs Surf Club is requesting that the Planning Commission split a 21.7 acre lot into, as you read into the record, 2 parcels. One that will be 18.3 acres, which will consist of the actual Palm Springs Surf Club operation, and then parcel 2, a 3 acre vacant east parcel for potential development. What the Planning Commission action tonight will do is to approve this tentative parcel map and also determine that the CEQA exemption is a Class 15 minor land division. This is a revision after consideration and discussion of CEQA exemptions. The Planning Department prefers to use the Class 15 minor land division, which is different than is in your staff report. And we have prepared a resolution that reflects the Class 15 CAT exempt. So looking at the site, as you mentioned, it's 1500 South Genotry Trail. This is an aerial photograph showing the Palm Springs Surf Club operation on the west end or the left end of the photograph. And then the 3 acre parcel is located on the far east end, which has access off of Crosley Lawrence. To the south of the parcel is Desert Water Agency, and then the golf course, the Takowitz Golf Course, is the green patch that's to the, I can point that out, to the south of the lot. There was a question as to where the CV link currently runs and will run once it's constructed in this portion of the trail system, and I'll point that out to you right now. Currently, it runs south of the surf park, south of the DWA water tanks, and then curves around the Takowitz Golf Course, and then enters and exits onto Crosley Lawrence here. So the CV link is not on the surf park property. In your packet is a tentative track map that shows the detailed 38815 parcel, as I mentioned, split into 2. And this is a more close-up of the parcel 2, the 3 acres, and the CV link is shown down here along the golf course and Desert Water Agency. So staff recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. As you mentioned, this is a public hearing and the property was posted and notice was sent out to all property owners within 500 feet of the property. There are a series of findings that the Planning Commission would need to make. The parcel map is consistent with the M1 zoning, and any development that would occur on the property at this time would have to be consistent with the M1 zoning. The site is physically suited for future development. It's suited for any kind of density, whether the density be a commercial entity like a hotel or other kind of commercial property. The design is not likely to cause environmental damage. There's no streams or creeks that run through the lot. Will not cause public health concerns and will not conflict with any easements or access to the property. So with that, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, I'd like to finish my report, and the applicant is here for any questions.
Thank you. At this point, I'll ask if our commissioners have any questions for staff. Commissioner Miller.
I got one question for you, Glenn. The tentative map shows that the parking lot for the surf club, or perhaps formerly for the water park before that, that extends to the far east, encroaches on parcel 2 a small bit. How does that get handled through this process, or does it not? Is that something that's subject to a future encroachment permit, or what?
Right, so those parking spaces are counted in the overall parking for the park itself. So at some point, there would have to be some kind of agreement that, what is that, maybe 20 spaces? The intent is that the lot will not be sold at this moment, but it possibly could be sold. So it still is within the ownership of the park itself. If there was a sale agreement, and maybe the applicant could address that, there would have to be some kind of agreement, I would assume.
And of course, the city's not going to be subject to any sale, so this is our opportunity, is it not, to address the issue?
As far as requiring them
Whether
to...
there'd be an encroachment permit needed, if that is required parking. If it's not required parking for the surf club, then it can go away theoretically.
Do I know what? Yeah, it would be required parking. So that is a good question. It's something that we would need to think through, but you could condition it to say something that with the lot split, the park would have to maintain its required parking. Now that, I don't know if there's other parking that could be picked up on the main lot itself by reconfiguring something, but we don't want to lose the required parking for the surf park itself.
Yeah, I think a condition of approval, Commissioner Miller, to the effect of something which Glenn said is maybe the way to cover that, to say, you know, should parcel 2 be sold or redeveloped, the required parking for parcel 1 would need to be memorialized in some fashion to be maintained for access of parcel 1.
Commissioner Morrow.
I just wanted to add, when I was at the site, it looked like they had already fenced where the property line would be when they split. So I believe they've already separated the parking lot. And at that far end of the parking lot, doesn't appear to be used for surf club parking.
And I think we can perhaps ask the applicant when they come up what the situation is and what the intention is, but if it is required parking, which we understand it to be, we would need to correct that situation, yes.
Are there any other questions of staff? Mr. Morrow.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's staff or for the, maybe more so for the owner, but I was wondering whether they envisioned that this was going to be used for an amenity to the surf club or some standalone business someday. Their application does say they're not necessarily selling it, so I was wondering what their vision was.
That sounds like a question for the applicant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can ask the applicant.
All right.
And let me just add one other thing. When I was out there, I noticed some dumping going on in parcel 2. They were using parcel 2 as some kind of staging area, possibly. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but there were a lot of barrels of things that had warnings on them and some artificial turf kind of carpeting and plywood and just miscellaneous building materials. Kind of looked like they could easily have been buried in place. They were in like a pit. So.
Sounds like another question for the applicant.
Yeah.
And just from staff's perspective, we did raise that with the applicant.
Yeah.
We'll follow up on it.
All right, I will open the public hearing and ask the applicant if they would like to make a presentation. Now is your time to do so. You can do so in response to the questions or concerns you've heard expressed by the commissioners, or you can present anything else that you think we should know when entering into deliberations.
So to address the parking,
Sorry, first, can you just state your name for the record?
Tom Brown, representing the owners for Palm Springs Surf Club. So to address the parking, the 20 spaces.
Sure, mic on, Mr. Brown.
How do you turn the? Okay,
now we
okay,
can hear
sorry,
you, yeah.
tall. So regarding the parking, that can be actually added into it. The parcel is going to be developed by the Palm Springs Surf Club, but by certain members. There's different people that are involved with it, and some of them won't be involved, and some will. But it's looking to be developed into for a hotel. So the parking can be that if it is sold. I'm not sure what direction we're going. If it needs to be sold because of the way the funding will need to be for the hotel and everything else, that is something the owners will have to. So that's why they're leaving that open. It's not really that they're trying to sell it. They want to keep it all as one. It all depends on the situation for funding. But the parking can be addressed. Yes, we are taking it so it can be added that, hey, if they are going to sell that, we have to provide in the new design that 20 spaces will be credited to. So we can put an amendment into that agreement. The fence was removed, but you do see a temporary fence. We were in the middle of putting up a solar. So we're putting up the carports right now, and then we're putting solar panels on afterwards. So we have a couple more months. But at the very far end, so we were in compliance with the 777 parking spaces. We did move. We had excess dirt, different things that got moved to the end. That is just a temporary staging. There's stuff, but we will definitely remove all that. We're still have about a good 4 to 6 months of construction that we're still working through right now. I do not have a presentation, so I do apologize for that. But if you would like to ask me any more questions, feel free.
Do any of the commission members have questions for the applicant? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would anybody else from the public like to address this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing.
There are just a couple members online, so
I'm
if
sorry.
you are online and wish to speak on this item, the Palm Springs Surf Club, please raise your hand. No
All right, we will
members.
consider the public hearing closed, and I will ask the members of the commission if anybody would like to make a motion.
Sure.
Into them all. I move that we approve the request by the Heritage Group. Whoop, wrong one, sorry. I move that we approve the request by PLC Communities. No, that's still the wrong one.
PSSC.
Oh, I'm in four, sorry, I'm on the
LLC.
wrong page. It's my fault. There we go. The request by PSSC LLC for a tentative parcel map 38815, requesting the split of one larger lot forming a second lot equaling 3 acres for the purpose of future development consistent with the listed uses in the M1 zone located off of Genotry.
Did you want to add any conditions relative to the parking or the stored materials?
We haven't seen any stored, but that's evidence not facts not submitted into evidence.
Is there a second?
Could we add a condition that they would clean up any of the staging materials currently on the site before the subdivision?
But they're dividing it to themselves.
I mean, it is their land. So I don't know how we can condition that.
It's like you putting stuff in your backyard.
Well, yeah, in fact, and the applicant further stated that they had some construction ongoing. So I understand that the stuff that's there is probably, being used for the construction that's going on. So I don't think it's right to condition the tentative map on that. Because if it's not for a construction site, then the city could, do enforcement action separate from the tentative map, just so you know that. But I would like to add the condition, if you would accept the encroachment, if necessary, for the existing 20 parking spaces to make sure they're accounted for.
Accepted.
So I'll second the motion then. I mean, I think, did staff want us to mention that the CEQA was going to be pursuant to CEQA Class 15, I think, for the
Right,
exemption.
that would be good.
Yeah.
Any
And if I could ask-
comments or further discussion before we?
Might I ask one point of clarification on your amendment, Commissioner Miller? Would you like that parking issue to be resolved prior to recordation of the final map?
I think there needs to be something on the record from the applicant that is enforceable to make sure, let's say the map is completed and they decide not to go ahead with the hotel, the parcel is sold off, then we've potentially lost those 20 spaces for the requirement on the main site if we don't have something in place before the map is completed.
Okay, I think prior to approval of the final map, then I think might work.
And is the maker of the motion acceptable with that condition?
It's accepted.
Is there any other discussion before we vote? See none, can we have the vote?
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Vice Chair Alayan,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell.
Yes.
Thank you and congratulations. The next public hearing that we have is item number B, a request by the United Parcel Service, UPS, represented by Red Architectural Group for the establishment of a conditional use permit for the existing UPS transportation terminal and the completion of related site improvements to parking and landscape areas located at 650 North Commercial Road, Zone M1P. This is conditional use permit 2024-0003. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, for the record, my name is Sarah Yoon, Associate Planner for the City of Palm Springs. The second public hearing item before the Commission this evening is for the commercial property located at 650 North Commercial Road. The site has been operated by the United Parcel Service, also known as UPS, since the site was first developed. The area map shown here reveals the shape of the irregularly shaped lot with a single access point at the lower southwest corner of the property. It is located in the M1P zone district with a general plan designation of industrial. One thing to note in this aerial image is the parking area to the north, where you see the black asphalt surface. This area was an expansion that was completed without prior approvals. The overall goal of the project is to bring the parking landscape areas into compliance with city standards and to expand and reconfigure the site to allow for all commercial activity to be contained within the site. The application that is before the Commission today is specifically for the request to establish conditional use permit for this work on the transportation terminal to proceed. A separate application for minor architectural review has been processed and will be processed to evaluate the proposed additions on the site. For a bit of background and context, the site was developed as a transportation terminal for UPS for package distribution in 1975. The existing masonry building viewable from North Commercial Road was built during that time. The site diagram on the left shows the surrounding areas and their uses, notably the airport runway to the east, vacant lots to the south, the self-storage located to the north, and the religious institution to the west are all allowed uses in the M1P zone district. These images were in your packet as well, show the current operations of UPS relying on a system that uses something called a portable distribution center, also known as a PDC for short. As you can see, these units are on wheels and they are strewn across the site in various locations, including across striped parking spaces. This temporary solution is not only creating inefficiencies with their operations, but it's also undermining availability of sufficient parking on the site. Just to quickly step through the parking reconfiguration that was proposed in the site plan. The area, the general parking need for this site is based on the use in the floor area, and that results in 38 parking spaces. However, the commercial activity on the site does require accommodations for package trucks and trailers. The area shown in green here is where a majority of the expansion and parking reconfiguration will occur. The total provision of parking on the site is listed at 219 spaces. The regular employee and commercial parking, or the customer parking, 120 package truck spaces will be provided and 23 trailer spaces. The red dotted area here is showing the area again that was expanded without approvals, which will be addressed. And the area shown in blue is the 68 existing spaces. However, they do not appear to be fully utilized due to the PDCs on the site. The area in purple is the addition of 50 spaces for package trucks, resulting in a total of 120 spaces specifically for the package trucks. Oops, I'm sorry. And based on the current operations, there are 83 package trucks that are dispatched throughout the day, 60 that are parked on the site. And then the last call out there is for the 15 additional parking for the trailers. This will bring that total to 23 spaces for parking trailers on the site specifically. Of course, with the expansion of the parking lot and the parking areas, landscape and shading requirements will need to be met. The proposed plan shows 50% of shading being provided and no covered shade structures are being proposed. Again, the request for expansion is what triggered the requirement for the conditional use permit. The submitted application complies with all 5 criteria listed in the zoning code, and those criteria are listed here. The full staff report goes into the findings, as well as those findings are listed in the draft resolution, which you can find in your packet. And to conclude, the transportation terminal for package distribution isn't allowed use in the M1P through a conditional use permit. Again, the staff finds that the proposed requests, or the proposed criteria is met for this request, and the staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the applicant's request for a conditional use permit to expand the existing UPS transportation terminal in the M1P zone district with the conditions of approval that are listed in Exhibit A, and that is part of the draft resolution that is in your packet. If there are any questions regarding the staff report or the recommendations, I'm happy to take those now. We do have the representative of UPS as well as a representative from Red Architecture here to answer any questions you may have for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff?
Just a quick question. The property abuts a runway, I believe, and I just wondered if the airport has to review the landscaping plan. Came up on another project, I think, recently.
Yes, so the applicant team has actually gone to ALUC and received their review. Their project has been reviewed.
And that's the Airport Land Use Compatibility Group at Riverside County for the public record.
A question you said that you would address later about the unapproved parking, but you didn't say anything.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
You said you were going to address the unapproved parking space later, but you never addressed that.
No, the project is addressing the expansion that was illegally done. And so as part of this application, they are bringing all of those elements into compliance.
Okay,
correct. So this application is bringing that work into compliance.
All right, I will open the public hearing and ask the applicant if they would like to come forward and make a presentation or answer any of the questions or concerns you've heard, or sit quietly and wait for the vote. Do any commissioners have questions for the
I do
applicant?
have one question for the applicant, I'm sorry, so you'll have to actually
And
come up, I'm
Can
sorry.
you come forward, please?
And if you could just state your name for the record.
Harris Shapiro with Red Architectural Group.
So I was able to go out to the site. I actually have something in the storage unit next door, plus I specifically went out this week. There's early in the morning and throughout the day, there is anywhere from 30 to 50 cars parked on commercial that are presumably employees, because I saw some of them walking into the site. And I know that that's been an issue for the city as well, and for the neighborhood, actually even on Juanita. So are all of those cars going to be required to park on this site now?
Yeah, so the intent of the new site plan with the 219 parking stalls, I believe it is total. I don't have the plan in front of me, but is to have all of the employees park on site along with the package trucks and their trailers. All commercial work, including employees, will be on site.
Okay, I'm glad I heard it.
Because there's also been UPS trucks parked on almost daily.
Yes, we have been apprised of that numerous times by planning staff. Sarah has made that very clear to us, and the UPS team. I have a UPS representative.
Sir,
here
can
that-
you speak into
I'm
the
sorry.
microphone? Thank you.
So we've been apprised of the issue with the trucks and trailers off-site. We have weekly meetings on this project for the last couple of years with the UPS staff. We've told them about the issues, and to my understanding, currently there are no trucks parked off-site, onto commercial itself. All the UPS trucks are on-site. We were made aware of some trailer that was parked off-site, and there was a question whether or not that's a UPS trailer. It was not a UPS trailer. I did go by the site this evening. That trailer is gone. It's the intent of the UPS folks to comply with all of the conditions and requirements to keep their commercial trucks and traffic off of the public road.
If I might just briefly, for the purposes of public record, because this has been raised as a concern over a number of years on different projects as well, I want to thank UPS and your team for working with us on that. We had a meeting a couple of months ago on this particular issue, and we did have a senior member of the UPS executive team join the phone call, and that issue ceased the very next day. And we've been monitoring it, and you have done a very good job at managing that traffic internal to the site. So we're very appreciative of that. The trailer that was referenced, Sarah did reach out to our code and PD folks who were going to look into it, and it sounds like they made some progress on that. So we're happy to hear that as well. It was not UPS's truck. And then just a little bit of information on the vehicles parking on the street that are not commercial vehicles. There is no signage there that would preclude that. Obviously, through this process, we want to make sure that there is sufficient parking on site to handle their employees. But there may be some employees who choose to park on the street, and per city rules, that really is not something that we can manage. We are, though, very concerned about the commercial parking, and again, they've addressed that, and there are conditions in your package that will also continue to address that.
To further on that, though, I believe we had another applicant who was intent on developing across the street, and they were concerned about that parking, and I believe engineering was going to look into putting restricted parking on commercial, so residents, or at least certain hours of the day, so people just can't park there all day long. So when and if that other property is developed, people would be able to have people park in front of their residence.
Yep, no, absolutely, and thank you for the reminder on that. That's right, and that's something we're still looking into, but that would be a future change, yes.
But lastly, on the same chord, I use that street often when I come to City Hall for meetings all the time, and the UPS drivers don't stop at the stop sign. They speed through there. I mean, I've been just like, whoa, and I'm a fast driver. And it's really not I don't know how that can be prevented because they're coming in late and they're trying to get home. I understand that, but they come around that corner in Alejo. If there are children around or people walking a dog, it's very, very dangerous. And it's not you, you're the architect, but something needs to be done or said to the drivers
If I
to
might,
that end.
I do have a representative from UPS here. I'll let him speak to that. So he can best address that. And that is a very good question.
How you doing? My name's James Bailey, one of the UPS engineering managers. I was actually speaking with the site manager who deals with all those drivers that you're talking about. He is more than happy to address any concerns that you guys might happen to have to the drivers themselves in order to make sure that they are acting as good neighbors, so to speak, I guess would be the best way to put it, driving safely. He's more than happy. He actually gave me his cell phone number, his work cell phone, for if you guys need to make phone calls to address him. He will be more than happy to address any concerns. But I will actually relay your concern to that site manager.
I'm really looking into the future with other developments coming and potentially housing.
Right.
That would be extremely dangerous with families coming in and out of their cars or kids playing in the street or walking dogs. But it is routine that I see those trucks just whip through there on a daily basis.
Yes, our drivers do move quickly. They are supposed to be moving very safely, though. So like I said, I will make sure that I bring that up with Alex, who is the site manager or the station manager, that his people have been observed breaking the speed limits and violating stop signs so that he can address those concerns.
Thank you.
I can also mention that this has come up a number of times. Unlike Commissioner Baker, I don't ever drive down that street, but I'm well aware of the driving that goes on by the UPS drivers because it comes up at Planning Commission hearings whenever we have any development anywhere within a mile of there. Seriously, all the way down Farrell. Yes. So please spread the word.
I will certainly spread the word. Our station managers they do discipline the drivers when they are not acting in accordance with our policies and procedures. So the minute they get that information, they will make sure that the drivers are notified. And if they know the package car number of whoever was found breaking the rules, the very next day that driver will be disciplined.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Any additional questions? And thank you. I'll now open the public hearing to other members or other interested parties who might be here to address this issue. And if the director would check and see if there's anybody online waiting to speak.
We just have a couple people left online. If you would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. No speakers.
Alrighty, then I will close the public hearing and ask the will of the commission. Commissioner Murphy.
I'll make a motion. I motion to approve the application for the conditional use permit to allow the expansion of the UPS transportation terminal at 650 North Commercial.
Is there a second?
Two conditions.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Miller. Any discussion before we vote? No, then I will ask for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Murphy.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Vice Chair Alain.
Yes.
Commissioner Baker.
Yes.
Commissioner Morel.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Item number 3 is for unfinished business. We have none. Item number 4 is new business. A is a request by Heritage Group on behalf of property owner, the Mezrahi Family Trust, for a major development permit application to construct a 15-unit multifamily residential development on a 1.37 acre site located at 211 North Sunrise Way. The APN number is 508-070-016, zone MDR. Case number is DP-2023-0019. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. The applicant is proposing a 15-unit apartment complex with units ranging from 1,300 to 1,800 square feet in size. All units will be 2 stories tall and vary between 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. The scope of review tonight is a development permit to review the proposed use and the development standards of this project. The subject site is located on a parcel that was once the parking lot of a utility building at 211 North Sunrise Way. In February 2024, the Planning Commission approved a tentative parcel map that split this lot into 2 parcels. The project site is an irregular shaped lot that is partially developed with a parking lot, landscape, curb, and gutter. The project site is surrounded by development on all sides. The adjacent property to the north is an existing 2-story industrial building for Frontier. The south is an existing medical building for Riverside Health, and there are existing multifamily buildings on the west and commercial buildings on the east. The project site is zoned and has a general plan designation of medium-density residential. The proposed project is appropriately zoned for this intended use. The medium-density residential designation has a density of 6.1 to 15 dwelling units per acre. This 1.37 acre site will allow between 8 to 20 units, and again, the applicant is proposing 15 units. The project site is located within the Section 14 specific plan, which refers to the development standards of the R2 zone. So here on the screen, the height, the setbacks, the maximum lot coverage, and the minimum open space requirements have all been met by the applicant. Parking. So the proposed project requires 35 parking spaces total. However, the applicant is only providing 32. However, with the approval of an administrative minor modification application, which is reviewed at staff level, this parking requirement will be satisfied and bring the project into overall conformance. The proposed site plan is shown above and is oriented in an L-shaped design with a through street and ingress and egress from both Andreas Road and Sunrise Way. Each unit will be 2 stories tall and have private parking via covered garages. There will be guest parking on site and amenities such as a community pool and play area. The images on the screen show the 1st story floor plan and the 2nd story floor plan. The roof plan, so the project is proposed to have flat roofs with solar panels. And the building orientation. Building A is located along the west property line, Building B along the north, and Building C along the south. The following are images of those elevations. So this is Building A, Building B, and Building C, which is consistent throughout the entire site. The project site is proposed to use desert neutral colors and materials, and this will be analyzed further via Architecture Review Committee at a later date. This is a recreational area with the community pool and playground. It also will have chairs and some picnic tables, as well as some shade structures. The applicant is providing 4 guest parking spaces for the community, 2 ADA and 2 standard parking spaces, as well as a community trash enclosure that will comply with the development standards of the zone, of the zoning code. Here's the landscape plan. This landscape plan is proposing desert neutral plants, desert appropriate plants, sorry, and will be reviewed as well by the Architecture Review Committee at a later date. Overall, this is the rendering of the complete project as it relates to the adjacent properties. And some up-close visuals of what it will be like inside the community. So on the far right, the top right is within the recreation area, and the remaining photos are just within the community's private street. Overall, the project is deemed categorically exempt from CEQA, and it meets, the standards that are outlined within the staff report. Staff recommends approval of the development permit subject to the attached conditions of approval. That concludes my report, and the applicant is also available for any questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions for staff? Commissioner Miller.
Well, maybe two. Alex, the 30 feet that is shown along Sunrise as looks like a setback essentially, is that a future right-of-way dedication or a right-of-way reserve of some sort? That 30-foot dimension along Sunrise?
So that 30 feet is just the typical setback for any development in that area. Because it's a major thoroughfare, 30 feet would be just the required setbacks.
Okay. So in other words, there's no additional right-of-way being required by this?
No.
Okay. Also, just a kind of a question in general. I actually like the architecture and the color schemes, and I think it complements well the building that is now off-site, the existing old gas building that I understand is on tomorrow's agenda to be designated as a historic one. I wish Sarah was still here. I was gonna, I don't know if she was involved in the review of this, but I think it did a really nice job of complementing without any sort of false historicism, but I think they'll look good together.
Commissioner Morrill, your light is on. Do you have questions?
Yeah, just the access to Sunrise Way is very limited from this property. You can really only, I believe, safely go south on Sunrise, and I wondered if that came up as a condition.
So the engineering department has placed a condition that says on Sunrise, it's only right in and right out.
Right.
And if that should suffice, I believe.
Yep. Okay. And just one other quick question, if they made any accommodation for electric vehicles for renters? That might be a question for the applicant.
Sorry, there is an amount of infrastructure they need to provide for EV, and it's typically dealt with through the building permit process, so unfortunately I don't have the details. We can certainly ask the applicant what the plan is for that, but there is a requirement that would be caught at the time of permitting.
Okay, I just have one question for staff. I saw in the staff report, the units are referred to as apartments. One place I think they're referred to as townhomes, but in the applicant's letter, it indicates that they are condominiums. And I'm wondering, do we know what the product is? That's what it says in the title, but elsewhere.
It would be apartment complex.
So these are rental units.
Yes.
Okay, then I guess my next question would be for the applicant. Are there any other questions of staff? All right. I will open this is not a public hearing. I will not open the public hearing. I will ask the applicant if they would like to come forward and if they have anything that they would like to present for us, or if they would like to respond to any of the questions or remarks that they have heard from the commissioners.
Commissioners and city planners. My name is Vicky
Can I-
Barbieri. Here?
Yes, give your name
I'm
and
sorry.
speak into the microphone.
I'm Vicky Barbieri from the Heritage Group, and I have with me my project manager, in case we need to look something in the computer. I like to answer the question or the doubt. These are apartment buildings, and at this point, there are no purpose to do condominiums. Only we design it. We'll ask condominiums in case that in the future somebody wants to do, or it's even better, more independent for the tenants. I don't know if you would like to have some question for us. I would like to respond to that, and if no, Manuel will do that.
All right, Commissioner Baker.
Is there an apartment manager that's going to live on site?
I don't think so.
Okay. Second, guest parking. There are only 4 guest parking spaces. So if I were to have a party and invite friends over and I invited more than 6 people, where would they be able to park?
Well, for my understanding is that they are public parking along Andreas, and that's what I can imagine. You can put extra guests that they need parking. By the code, we are only short in 3 parkings. That is into the 10% tolerance that I think the city has for these circumstances. I think the planning department has received our application for this small variance.
And lastly, as an electric car driver, are there plans to have an electric car charging station?
Well, because everybody or very close to everybody, soon people is going to have electric cars, we are planning to put electric outlets appropriate for the cars in each of the garage.
Oh,
and
excellent.
Yeah, and maybe in the guest parkings, because soon it's going to be the common. Then as well we anticipated to do it during the time of construction. That is much easier and much cheaper to do
Wow.
than later.
I applaud you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there other questions? I have one, and part of this is a statement and part is a question. First of all, I'm way happy that these are apartments. We need more in the city, and this is a great location for people. But secondly, the location of the swimming pool and the playground for children. Typically, if you have apartments or any kind of housing, if people have children or young children that they want to be able to play without them, without the parents, they're full-time with them, you want to put the playground especially in a location where as many of the apartment dwellers as possible have eyes on it. They can watch what's going on and they can check on their kids. I'm wondering if there was any, and this has the playground right down near the entrance. Was there any thought to switching it with the location of the swimming pool or moving it up further? Or how did you arrive at this location, and would you give consideration to sliding it north, flipping some of the trash enclosure, for instance, moving that down?
Well, there are 2 thoughts. One of them, that the public entertainment areas are very noisy. And I suffer that in my own situation, where the pool is in the middle of the development, and the noise, the yelling, the screaming, is all day long. Then I always thought if we can kind of put it in the more reserved area, maybe it will facilitate for all the tenants that don't have kids. And the other thing is, in case what the gentleman said, if I do a pool party for 40 people, could you imagine what it would be for all the surrounded apartments? And the other one is that each of the apartment has a beautiful backyard that is going to be, in some of them, 10 feet by 40, in another 12 feet by 40, in another 14 by 40, plus an enclosed, no enclosed, shady pergola area for outside dining. What I mean, each of the units has a magnificent backyard landscape. On top of that, they have private terraces, private balconies, and the second story. Your comment is absolutely welcome, but this is the experience that we have suffered with the design of those units surrounded with the pools or the recreation areas where it become impossible. That is our theory, for good or for bad. Anyway, the tenants has a space to have the kids. They could even put those temporary pools because the yards are big.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question on the pool.
Commissioner Baker is probably going to be causing the problem with the loud parties going on because he wants to.
No, I'm just
bring
concerned
6
about
people.
shade for both the playground and the pool. Because it doesn't seem to be any, well, we don't see any landscaping, but just as we did in our city parks, we're starting to put shade structures, because otherwise if there's any playground equipment, it's too hot to even touch for 3 months out of the year. As well as a pool, it's great to have a pool, but I mean, this time of year, if you had some shade or umbrellas or overhang to give just some relief from direct sun, because there's a lot of asphalt all around that.
Well, it's something that we can talk to our landscape architect, but I think we provided 3 areas of shade to be able to put tables and chairs and the people who doesn't want to be in the sun. In reference to put umbrellas is something that we'll have to do, I imagine, with the owner or the tenants. And in reference to leave no roof in the play areas is kind of a purpose, because if they develop to put a basketball court to play one day or any other exterior games, a roof would be very detrimental. But if they want to do something in the open yard, they can always put umbrellas in their own. I think I need to leave some space where they can use that in a multiple uses.
No, I'm just concerned in this time of year where you
I
can't be
know.
outside in direct sun for several months. I mean, for the rest from September till April, it's not a big worry at all.
Yeah. I've been coming to your beautiful town for 45 years. Then I know this very, very well. I'm from Glendale, and I can notice the difference in the temperature.
Thank you.
We try, but any suggestions will be absolutely well considered. Any suggestion that will make the project better, more livable, more habitable, we are always welcome.
Any further questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is anybody prepared to make a motion, or Commissioner Miller?
I would make a motion to adopt a resolution determining that the project is exempt from CEQA review and approve the project subject to the conditions laid out by staff.
I would love to second that, because nobody beat me to it, and because I think it's a wonderful project. It's a wonderful infill project in that location. I really have a hard time finding a single fault with it. I'm excited to see it come in. So we have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Alain,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, and we're enthusiastic. All righty. Item number B, a request by PLC Communities LLC for the approval of final development plans for 71 single-family residences on 60-foot wide lots within the Phase 2 section of the Miralon development located at 801 Sunrise Way, Zone PDD 290, Section 35. The case number is PDD 2024-0001/5. 6.0982 PD 290. May we have a staff report, please? And if anybody would like to scrub off one of my contact lenses and put it back in my eye, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the Planning Commission. So if you recall, way back on February 28th, this item was on your agenda. However, before a formal hearing could begin, the Planning Commission decided to pull the item from the agenda and then form a subcommittee of 3 consisting of Chair Warmick, Vice Chair Alain, and Commissioner Rotman to work with the applicant and staff in order to address some of the concerns and comments that were made by the Planning Commission. And so following that recommendation, on March 5th, 2024, the applicant met with the subcommittee members, and following that meeting, the applicant submitted on 3 different occasions revisions to the original plans based on the comments and recommendations of the subcommittee. Those 3 revisions were reviewed by the urban development staff, and we provided additional comments and concerns. The applicant worked graciously with us in addressing those issues. And so it is the 4th revision that is before you tonight. And that was only at the time when staff was comfortable and determined that they have met the several comments made at the subcommittee meeting. Those comments are a part of the attachment to your staff report. It is the attachment D. Now, again, I want to, for the benefit of our new planning commissioners, this is a final development plan, meaning that there was a preliminary review at some point, and this is a, at least with the scope of review of the Planning Commission, this is to determine that these plans are in substantial conformance with the preliminary review. In this case, what you'll be looking at is the plot plan, the overall site plan, and then the development standards. Now, according to the code, there are 3 findings to be made for substantial conformance. Number 1 is that the final development plan is in substantial conformance with the preliminary development plan. Number 2, that the final development plan is substantially in conformance with all other associated entitlements for the development. And finally, that the final development plan incorporates all modifications and conditions to the preliminary development as approved by the City Council. Staff determined that the applicant has met all those 3 findings. So again, according to the code, the final review will be carried on by a different review body, the Architectural Review Committee. That is where the detailed architectural designs and the landscape, including colors and materials, will be reviewed for conformance. In that case, there are 14 different findings to be made, and that will be presented to the ARC. So tonight, what's really within your scope again is the development standard, meaning the density, number 1, the lot sizes as approved during the preliminary review, the setbacks, the height limitations, and all of those in your staff report, as indicated in your staff report, have all been met. Now, so if you recall, the total number of units will be 71 single-family units on 60-foot wide lots at the Mirror Lawn. Now, the reason why I'm emphasizing on the 60-foot wide lots is that unlike other lots that range from 40 to 55-foot wide, in Mirror Lawn, their development standards are slightly different. So, for instance, on the 60-foot wide lots, swimming pools are required in each of the lots. So are patios, they are required. Again, those requirements have been met. So what is before you tonight, there will be 3 different plan schemes and 3 different floor plans. They are designated as Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3. Each of those floor plans we further have 3 different elevation types. They are designated as elevation A, B, and C. Plans 1 and 3 are all single-story buildings. Plan 2 are two-story buildings. Each of those lots will range from 6,600 square foot to 10,213 square foot. The buildings themselves will range from 2,530 square foot to 2,800 square foot in size. And as I mentioned earlier, each of these units, each of the lots will contain pools and patios as required by the Mirror Lawn design guidelines. So just to put this in context, this is the location of the 60-foot wide lots, right? This area right here that is highlighted in yellow, those are where the 60-foot wide lots are located. The next slide is the site plan or the plot plan. This is where we review the density, where we review the other development standards, in particular, the setback requirements, meaning that the front yard is two-side yard, and then the rear, that they are in conformance with the development standards. This is just a continuation of the site plan or the plot plan. And again, this shows the various location of the type, the plot plan types. Now, the commission in the past has requested for street scene renderings, and this is a conceptual street scene rendering, and that's how they will look like upon completion. And here I have, to the left, to the top is a revised elevation, and on the bottom you have the previous elevations, the ones that you saw at the beginning, and then you saw at the subcommittee meeting. Your comments were incorporated into the elevations on the top. Madam Chair, I don't know if you want me to go through all of this one, but I have 47 slides. Overall, overall, they do meet.
I think we can look at a representative couple of those.
Okay. All right. So they do meet your recommendations. They met your comments. But again, this is a slide of Plan 1, the front elevation. So to the left, again, you can see the previous. You can see the elements on the variation A that has multiple roof planes that you complained so much about the first time, and then you talk about lack of shading elements on the other two variations, but you can see the improvement on the revised elevations, and these are all in compliance with the comments that you provided to the applicants. So these are the floor plans. This is the original floor plan on Plan 1, and this is a revised floor plan. The reason I'm showing this is that as a result of your comments, the location of windows and doors were changed in some of these floor plans. That is why I thought it was essential to bring to show those to you. And these are the 4-side elevations. We have the 2 sides and the rear. One of the comments that the Planning Commission and the subcommittee made at the meetings was that you wanted this to conform with the 4-sided treatment architecture that is required by the design guidelines. Staff believe that they have met that requirement, and one of the other comments was that you wanted these elevations to be simplified because the first one you saw seemed to be too busy, but you can see the difference. So the revised elevations are to the right and the original one are to the left. These are just the 3D renderings of the buildings. So to the left, that's the previous one. That's the one you saw initially. And to the right are the revised 3D renderings. In particular, you see the roofings are different. So for instance, on this variation, you can see how many roof planes that were there, but you can see this on this time around it's been simplified. So this is Plan 1, Variation B floor plan. And these are the drawings of the elevations to show the improvements that have been made. One thing to really note is that, so for instance, you're looking at this variation here that was lacking solar control elements. That has been corrected here, and the same thing applies to these two with either brows or more recessed planes. And for variation B, still on Plan 1, these are the 3D renderings. To the left are the original renderings, and to my right are the revised renderings. So here you can see clearly on the four-sided treatment that was asked of the applicant. And this is variation C, still of Plan 1. And these are the side elevations. Again, the previous submittal is on the left, and the revised submission is to the right. And
Let me check with my fellow commissioners. Have you had an opportunity to look through the drawings on your own, and are we satisfied with? Okay, all right. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay. Well, you don't want to hear my recommendation?
Well, thank you for your presentation of the architecture.
Okay.
Detailed presentation. And yes, we do want to hear your recommendation.
So staff recommendation is to approve the, to find that these are in substantial conformance with the preliminary designs using the architecture. However, if there are still some areas of concern that you want us to carry forward to the next reviewing body, please do that. We will include that in our staff memo to the ARC if there are any concerns or additional comments that you may have to improve, to further improve the design, staff both on the design itself and the landscape plans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Any suggestions that we would like to see passed along to the Architecture Review Commission? I do have one. And thank you for getting me this afternoon the landscape guidelines for Maryland. The street trees, I noticed that they've only selected 3 for the 71 homes. And I think that the list of approved trees in the Mirror Lawn landscape guidelines has more like 20 different ones. Okay. And I would suggest that they might get a little bit more interest if they either did one or two things, either choose a 4th type of street tree to use as typical, or one of the ones that they've selected is a hybrid of a desert willow and something I can't pronounce, but it does produce, there are 3 different types of it. One produces white blossoms, one lavender blossoms, and one pink blossoms. So I would say either add a 4th type of tree or use some variety in the colors of the desert willow hybrid to get a little bit more interest would be my suggestion.
Noted.
Otherwise, I think that they have responded very well to the comments that we put forward as a subcommittee. Is there discussion or a motion?
Just a note of point of procedure, you didn't open it up to the applicant. I don't know that they'd have anything to say.
It's not a
but
public
the
hearing,
applicant
and
is
do we
here.
have the applicant online even? I did not even see you down there. 1,000 pardons, and you are cordially invited to tell us what you think we should know as we deliberate.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, Commissioners. My name is Patrick McCabe. I'm Vice President of Forward Planning for PLC Communities. Just real quickly, we've spent a lot of time working with staff on this, and you heard from Edward that this was our fourth rendition, and it's not because we're hard-headed. It's because I think we're working through the details. We're working through a lot of the things that usually come up through ARC, but we wanted to be complete. We wanted to really listen to what the commissioners had previously said. Obviously every subcommittee meeting is your valuable time that you're devoting to us, and so we want to make sure we're taking advantage of those comments and incorporating those things. So we did spend a lot of time, going through those. As you can see, a lot of them were really simplification, complicated roofs. We know there's going to be solar on top of the roof. So the more simple we make those roofs, the more, area we have to satisfy those conditions on the building side. So, those were the types of things. On the landscape, obviously, we went from a single tree that is seen and dictated in Miralon. We did the Aura project where I believe all the front trees are the Desert Museum, which is my understanding that that's not necessarily a favorite of the city anymore. We are more than open to explore various types. Obviously we come in a little conservative on this package, but it's definitely something that we're willing to explore further as we work through ARC. So we don't have any problems with that. But we're here. I'm here with the landscape architect as well if we have any specific questions. And if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
And as long as you're here, I'll take the opportunity to thank you for the thoughtful response, complete with many perspectives and renderings and visual aids to the questions that we had brought up that caused us to have the item pulled and not discussed the first time it came forward. When you came forward to the subcommittee, you've done a really bang-up job of addressing the items that were the principal concerns of the subcommittee members. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. There's no public hearing to close. I will ask my commissioners if you have questions for the applicant. No?
I'd move that we adopt a categorical exemption per CEQA guidelines and approve the proposed minor plan development district amendment subject to conditions. Oh, they're wrong.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
An approval by the ARC, sorry.
Right,
That
yeah,
sentence.
with
An
approval
by the
by
ARC.
the
Architectural Review Committee.
With that, I'll second it.
All right. Are there any discussion before we call the vote? I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Baker.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Vice Chair Alain.
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy.
Yes.
Morrell.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And also, staff, will you extend a thank you to the urban planning architect on to step to Ken Lyons for he spent a lot of time on this, I know as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. You're the only one here from the subcommittee, but thank you.
Alrighty, and we are now on to, contrary to Commissioner Baker's belief that that was our last item, we have one more.
Well, luckily, it's not a big one.
It's this thick. Director Hadwin, would you like to address our last item?
Sure, and this is a file for information at this point, or for review, I should clarify. At this point, we are not presenting it or discussing it tonight. It will be noticed as a hearing at our first meeting in September. But we wanted you to spend your remaining months of summer by the pool reading thousands of pages from our draft general plan. So we're really just introducing it to you. This has obviously been a process that's been underway for a number of years. It's gone through a steering committee, which a few of you have sat on, including Chair Wormiak and Commissioner Baker. The safety element, for example, has gone through a number of reviews at the state level, including with CAL FIRE. A number of other agencies have reviewed it, and the general plan's land use element has also been reviewed by the city council. So this is kind of the culmination of what has been many years of review. And so enjoy your reading, and we will come back for a much fuller discussion in September and ideally for adoption. And if you have questions as you're working through it, the other goal of giving this to you a little bit early is as if you have questions as you're working through it, certainly reach out to myself and David Newell, who's been very ably managing this for a number of years, and we will try to sort of give you some context and help you in your review before we have the hearing. Yes.
Thank you. Next item is Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. Do any commissioners have any of the foregoing? Seeing none, I'll ask for a planning director's report. I will ask for a planning director's concise report.
Yes, I don't have a lot of updates. I know there's still some lingering items that we've discussed under my previous reports. I've not forgotten about them. As you might imagine, this agenda consumed a lot of staff time preparing for this and working through it. So I will get back to that on my summer break while we are dark and give you further updates in September. One big update is that I believe, Vice Chair Lan, you will be departing us briefly. And I'm not sure if you want to discuss that, but...
I will, excuse me, say subject to approval by the City Council. The City Council will be asked tomorrow night to have me assist on staff for several months while they conduct a search for a new Director of Parks and Recreation. So I will be filling in, provided they approve it, filling in on a temporary basis. Because the municipal code doesn't permit one person to both be a staff member and a commissioner, I will ask for a leave of absence from the commission in order to assist in the other capacity.
So we've been through this before just last year, and we will miss you, but I'm looking forward to working you again in a different capacity. And
the city manager promised, I hope you're watching this, city manager, promised that this would be the last time that this happened.
And wishing you all the best in that work. It's a tough job, and I know that you are very capable and will do a great job. So, and we'll look forward to getting you back by the end of the year. So thank you. I have no other updates unless you all have any questions for me.
Alrighty then.
One question. We did have one subcommittee meeting on the other Maryland piece. Do we anticipate any other subcommittee meetings in August or not?
At this point, I'm not anticipating any until I think we are waiting to for their response to that subcommittee meeting and the comments you provided. Okay. That will determine the next process and step we take.
And just one very brief update I forgot to give, in addition to the big item for Vice Chair Lan tomorrow night at City Council, Museum Way is also on the agenda. So I know that you all made your general plan conformity determination. The full public hearing for the actual vacation itself will be on the agenda tomorrow night. Of course, what is not under consideration is the placement of the museum, but I am sure that we will have a robust public discussion about that item.
It's not on the consent?
It is a
calendar,
public hearing. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Street closure is a little bit interesting in that they have to, by consent at the meeting that they did earlier in the month, a resolution of intent to close a street, which is the first step in the process, which needs to occur before the notice public hearing, which will be tomorrow night. Yes, and a couple of historic designations, including, as you mentioned, Commissioner Miller, the house adjacent to the 15 apartments, which you all had seen previously, recommended for Class 1 designation. That's it.
All righty, and then we will adjourn until 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 11th. Everybody enjoy August in the desert.